We're back counting down the best board games of all time. Today we're covering 40 to 31.
Welcome to BoxedMeeples. I'm Libby, this is Julian, and we are here counting down our top 50. This is the second video of a series of 5, so we are counting from 40 to 31 today. I'm very excited to see how things have moved about, what new things are coming in.
So if you want to know how we've ranked these, have a watch of the previous video. We went into detail about, the process we went to of ranking. We probably play thousands of board games now. So trying to whittle it down to just 50 has been a hard job. So don't get too cross with us. If your favourite game isn't on the list, it might be on the last list, or it might be on a future list, or maybe we just don't like it as much as you.
Well, make sure you do tell us what it is though, just in case we haven't played it.
And if you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing to get updated about when the new videos are appearing, and joining in the discussion down below always does help us out.
It does indeed. So shall we get right into it?
Dive straight in to our number 40. Sleeping Gods has somewhat plummeted from last year when it was 13 in my list of favourite games. And I think that's probably because we haven't played it again. We did complete the whole campaign. We had a reasonably good ending, and we have intended to go back to it. We just haven't been able to devote the time to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why it just slipped off my list. It was in the 50s when I ranked it, but just because we haven't played it in a little while now. That's
not to say I didn't love the game and the experience we had of it. I used to play a lot of video games with that kind of adventure type elements of it, a lot of those Zelda games. And it did feel like that experience brought to the table with a really great story and really beautiful art. Well, it felt like you could explore anywhere you wanted to in this world and you'd find adventure. And it felt like once we completed it, we were only really just scratching the surface, which does explain our desire to play it again.
Yeah, every time you go to a new location, you find out something else and you're kind of sort of mentally thinking, oh, I want to go there and I want to go there and I need to check this place out. So every time you play, you've got loads of things that you want to do, and obviously you can only do so much. And then each of those subsequent turns, there's then more things added to that list of where you might want to go, where you need to investigate to do this one thing. And then you've got to remember those other little clues for those other back projects.
That was our undoing, our lack of ability to write down notes and cartography.
Yes, we were quite bad at that.
But we've just Distant Skies is available to get if you did want to have a similar kind of experience, albeit a entirely new adventure using that engine. And we've also got Primeval Peril, which is a shorter version. It was originally a print and play, but now is a fully fleshed out campaign, which might be able to be easier to slot in because it is so much shorter. So I think there will be some adventuring in that world some point soon. And the fact it has dropped doesn't mean I don't love the game anymore.
My number 40 hasn't slipped too far, but it has slipped just that little bit. It's just one, and it last year was 34, so still within this same list. So I kind of think that's a kind of pretty much staying relatively stable. And I think it's one of our go-to party group games. It's one of those games you can play with any number of people. You just need to have a pen, a paper, a dry wipe for them. And it's a great one for family get-togethers and things. I don't think you need to be a gamer at all to play this game. And just a really, really fun word game. And it's great when you're trying, obviously, not to match up things. You're trying to think of something really obscure, but not so obscure that no one's ever going to get the clues, particularly when they're combined together. Especially, I do find it hilarious when you end up with a pair, another pair, another pair, and then the guess is literally left with like two random as things that you couldn't possibly connect in anyone's brain. And then somehow they're there kind of drilling down, trying to work out who might have written that and what sort of wavelength they would have been on, and kind of reverse psychologying their way into actually guessing correctly. And it's those kind of moments where the whole group's like, oh my gosh, how on earth did you get that make this game fantastic.
Now, we've talked a lot on various videos about how we go to conventions and play it with huge numbers. And I think it's incredible how the game scales from a group of 5 people to, at times, 100 people. We were playing through a Frosthaven campaign, and sadly that got interrupted by real-life responsibilities and the annoyance of jobs. But on the way to that job, I was able to play Buttons and Bugs on the train, solo, and it was a wonderful reminder of how much I do enjoy that kind of engine.
So are you bulking Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Line, Frosthaven, Buttons and Bugs? You put
anything
4 games
with a prefix and then Haven counts in this.
Oh, right.
But I do really love the engine. I like the world building, and I do enjoy the camaraderie of it. You know, getting together with the same people, we play with the same group every time we play these games. And I think the reason it's dropped down the list is because I miss the group. I miss, I when I think about all the happy, fun memories I have of playing this game with you and the others, it comes from the experience of playing it all together. And that is slightly lost, obviously, when you're playing Buttons and Bugs solo. But I think if we had been able to continue our campaign, this once again would be much, much higher. Partly this has dropped because I just miss them all. I'm so keen to pick up those characters again and continue our adventure.
Septima is new to my top 50, but it's not new to the list per se. It just didn't make the top 50 last year. Probably because at that point we'd only played it once and I just didn't think I knew enough to be able to sort of gauge it. But it is a game that I really enjoy. I love that sort of witch coven idea in that sort of set in that classic sort of Salem history period. And it's really fun trying to do all of those things that you need to do with your witches, brew your potions and heal people and do all of that stuff without raising too much suspicion. Because there are going to be some witch trials. And if someone of your coven gets found guilty, you will lose them and all of what they bring to your group. So it is really interesting trying to get enough people into those trials to kind of sway the jury. Sometimes you might want to go and see the Grand Witch, the Septima. She's really helpful, but everyone knows she's a witch, so she is going to raise your suspicion. When you play cards, if you play the same thing, you get extra bonuses, but playing the same thing raises suspicion. So it's that whole balance of what you're doing, how many potions and spells and things you can cast, whilst also balancing what on earth is happening with all these villagers and their pitchforks who are coming to get you.
One of my favourite game mechanisms are worker placement games, and Viticulture is a fantastic example of this. Quite accessible.
Yes.
Easy to play. And I do like how it mirrors the process of winemaking.
Yeah, it makes it more accessible, I think, because it's so logical in how that process goes together and what you would need to do when. Obviously, you can't bottle wine before you've got any grapes.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah.
Now, we will never play this without the Tuscany expansion or unless we're playing Viticultural World, because with the original one, even the Essential Edition, there is a kind of dependency on luck, getting the orders that you need, which is kind of removed when you've got other things to busy yourself with. But there's something cozy and comforting I find about Viticulture, maybe because it's so familiar to us. We played it so much. I just find it like a big old warm hug and a glass of wine in front of the fire, because it's just accessible. It's familiar. It's easy for us to table and play. And having that grande worker in there does take away the headaches you sometimes get with these worker placements of someone's been to my spot. Well, there's kind of a safety cushion in this. There's an ability to still go to that spot with that one chance of that grande worker. And that little addition takes away the stress of worker placement without taking away the kind of skill needed to play it. I think if someone said, what's this worker placement game's all about? I would start with Viticulture and then work onto more complicated ones. But yeah, Viticulture is a fantastic starting point for those kind of games.
Yeah, I do really enjoy that one. So SETI is quite obviously new to the list. It came out at Essen. But I just think it's one of those that's going to shoot up. I wonder, the more and more we play it, it will become like the spacey Lost Ruins in my head, because it has all of that kind of, as you were talking about Viticulture, that kind of comfort play, thing, but also has a real amount of crunch for you to get into, different routes to victory, to sort of explore. Are you going to be putting satellites on? Are you going to be landing on different planets? What aliens are coming up to play with? We've really been enjoying our first sort of foray into SETI, and I can see that potentially going up and up as we go along. I love how the cards work, and multi-use cards are always great in games, so you can use them for their main action, you can pay with them, and those alien cards that come in are giving really different interesting things, and maybe different missions that you can try to achieve endgame to really hike up those points. So I really love how it all comes together as a puzzle.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it as well, and I'll be talking about it in a later video. Can you love something too much? I adore the game Boop. But the problem is, I've played it so much.
You have.
So much. And variations on it. So you have Boop, and Boop the Halls.
Yeah.
The problem is, I feel like a Boop chess grandmaster. Because now, when I play with people, I can kind of think so many turns ahead. And if I've just explained it to them, it feels like, oh gosh, I can win this in like 3 moves. But do I want to? Does that put them off playing? So, with the exception of obviously playing with you, sometimes it doesn't pose the challenge it used to. I still think this is such a great kind of game, just for quick setup, quick play, thinky type things. And what's always been strange about Boop is I've never really liked 2-player dueling games of this kind of abstract nature before. It's just not been appealing to me because I couldn't understand why I wasn't winning. But there's something about this that just worked for me. Maybe it was the kind of comical aesthetic of cats bouncing on a bed or climbing a Christmas tree. Maybe because it's just at its heart a really clever game. And yes, I love playing it, but perhaps I need to take a step back.
Yeah, and we did play Boop the Halls quite a bit over Christmas, and I do think that adds a little something different and extra, particularly with the ornaments, because you do have to catch those to make sure that you don't lose, not from the cat alignment, but from those ornaments. So I think that has sort of burst in a new life for Boop for us, but in my head, the normal Boop's like a summer game, so we'll have a few months. Kind of, probably because we took it on so many summer holidays.
But yeah, can't get better. If you want a kind of puzzly, quick game, can't get better than Boop. But perhaps, I've been overbooped.
Something that I haven't been overplaying is Star Wars Imperial Assault. Now, we've said, I think even last year's list, maybe the year before, I can't remember how the years sort of pan out, that we really wanted to get this one back to the table. We have only played the campaign through once. This is a new addition to the collection, a birthday present. We'd previously played a friend's copy, and we did that in lockdown. We were playing over video. They were setting out our cards, sending us all of our upgrades all the time. And then towards the end of it, we did manage to play in person. So it was quite some time ago. But I still remember how epic my Wookiee was.
Yeah.
I had him up to full strength. We did all of the missions. We did loads of side missions, probably more than we were meant to. And we all had our little nuances in terms of how we played. You had a sniper that just didn't sniper at all.
No,
so we just mocked you constantly throughout the game. And it was all of that table banter and action and being in that Star Wars world and feeling like you were immersing in that and in a story each time that you were trying to achieve. Just something that it's a game experience that I'll remember and that I would like to replicate at some time. I mean, I am tempted to play a different character, but then I was so in love with my great, strong Wookiee that how could I not play him again?
I think it's similar to what I was saying about Gloomhaven. A lot of these games, it's the people you're playing with that make them feel special.
Yeah, and it's those experiences that keep them on the list year after year because you still remember those really highlights. And I think some games come into a list and then they sort of quickly end up dropping down. You don't play them as much. But those that have those sort of key memories and moments in your sort of gaming history are the ones that really stay up high.
I've always avoided trading card games because I've always thought that's a big old money investment. I could buy so many other games for the amount of cards I'd have to buy for that. Then Disney Lorcana came along and we fell instantly in love with it. We kind of bought into it before we'd even played it, just hoping it would be good. Unfortunately, it was. Admittedly now, the amount of cards we've bought has scaled back quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you go into it, I think, especially first series, thinking, oh gosh, completionist, let's get all the cards. Can I get all of them? And then the more that comes out, I mean, personally, that has waned, and I'm just happy to have new things, new series come out, and I don't need every card. I don't need the fancy cards. I don't need the foiled ones. I just enjoy the gameplay.
Yeah, but I think the latest expansion, I don't think we've got anything new from it because we've already built our decks. We've kind of got competitive, balanced decks. And yeah, we've got enough to be able to enjoy the game, I think, to its fullest. And I'm not saying we won't buy more stuff in the future.
We will.
You know, a new mechanic comes in, like when the locations came in, we're going to invest again.
Yeah.
But right now, we've got a really great selection of cards. We've got our own decks, and we can even, you know, visit tournaments and be slightly competitive. Although there's some people there who are...
That's debatable.
But we won't come last. Well, sometimes we come last. But I've had some great experiences of this. Obviously, I went to the launch of one of them, which is fantastic. Went with Rosie and had a great time seeing how that worked. And what's interesting is that then introduced the cooperative mode of Lorcana. Yeah. And I liked how that then changed the play style and made it even more accessible to all sorts of people. And you could just gather around together and have a kind of enemy objective that you have to defeat. And it kind of twisted the kind of approach you had to the card game, where it wasn't just being aggressive and attacking and, you know, trying to be the winner. It was trying to win collectively. And I found that made the game much more family friendly. And then you could go on to then play the game in that more traditional.
Yeah. I mean, we mostly play it in that enemy versus enemy, one-on-one. But it does give you options then.
There's lots I love about Lorcana, though. I love the fact that, you know, all of the art in it was purpose drawn for this game, which gives it a lovely sense of cohesion that you don't always see in other trading card games, where sometimes the art is very different across them. I love that sense of just, it's a rich Disney experience. And for people who love Disney, there's so much in there. You notice all these kind of Easter eggs and hidden Mickeys in there that are just appealing to a Disney fan. And like I said, really great mechanics that go on there.
So Vindication's a game that I had been wanting to play for ages. And then I finally picked it up probably a year and a half ago, I think. And then it took us until probably not quite a year of owning it to actually get it to the table. And I did love it as much as I thought I was going to. It is such a great puzzle. As you explore out, find where different tiles are, which ones are you going to control and get benefits from throughout the game? Are you going to go and fight monsters? Are you going to, I mean, that cube management in it, you really have to work out what you're doing with that, I think, in order to be able to have those actions available, have you move them up into the sort of different sections of converting them so you can do what you need to do, and just getting all the right cards, being in the right place. If you've controlled a type of building and the other type of that building's maybe all the way over the other side of the board, and then you're kind of thinking, people are going to have to come. They're going to have to come here. What I really love about this game, which I think I managed to do the first time we played actually, is that you can force a win condition. So you start the game with a couple of different win conditions. And then when you get to certain victory points, more win conditions come out. So the chances of the game ending become higher and higher the further you get into the game, because the more points you've got, there's more win conditions there. And so if you feel like you're doing all right, but other people might sort of be chasing your tail a little bit, if you've had a good start to the game, you could really, instead of thinking about the long game, you can really push for one of those end game conditions and force the next round to be the last round if you think you can survive everyone else getting those points in, knowing that you've pushed for the end of the game. in there. So if you feel like you're in a good position, you can really speed things up, rush for the end, and hold on for dear life and hope that you still get the win. And I think, as far as I remember, I think I managed to do that in our first game. So that's another, that sort of adding of win conditions as you go through the game, rather than have once you get to 50 points, then you finish, or first to get to 50 wins. I really like that. It's giving you something to do in order to win and get to those different points. And the further you get into the game, the more and more objectives you have to be able to complete.
What I find really funny is, for a game where you're trying to prove your kind of morality, the fact that the dice bag is called the scumbag.
Oh, I love that.
That's just a nice little touch that makes it more appealing.
I mean, you are definitely trying to vindicate yourself, because you definitely have been pretty scummy.
There was that crazy year when we were doing these countdowns where I forgot Dune Imperium because I lent it to someone and it wasn't on our shelf, so therefore in my head it didn't exist anymore. Dune Imperium, though, certainly does deserve a place on this list. We, like so many, we enjoyed the films recently, and having a game that's based on those and so elegantly done makes it even more appealing for a kind of, often, tie-in titles aren't always the best. This one certainly is a great one.
It really is.
But at its core, I like it because it's a fusion of worker placement and something else, which, there's other games like that, which are going to be on the list that I do prefer to Dune Imperium. You probably know what that is. But that doesn't stop Dune Imperium being great. And I love the fact that this now has the battle system as well. So you're not only working out what to do with your cards, but you do have that inevitability of battles, which might mean you then control certain areas on the board and you're getting benefits and people go there. What's great is you don't have dud cards in this game. You might not want to go to the pace that the action will allow you to do, or do the action itself, but then you can still use that to then later buy other cards from the market, and that's brilliant. And it's a game where it slowly builds and builds and builds, and there's a big rush at the end where once you cross that threshold and it triggers the end game, you then have to scurry together and work out what's the best optimal use of my remaining resources, my remaining cards, to see how high I can get on that. Because often whoever triggers the end of the game isn't always going to be the winner, because people have those strategy cards up their sleeves that they can bring out at the last moment.
Yeah, it's a game I really love, and I'll be talking about a little later. Maybe not in this list. This one's come way up the list from 50 last year, right at the bottom of the list. And it's interesting because we haven't played it as much in person, and I do very much prefer it in person, because I feel like the joy of this game is sitting around the table, putting on the posh fancy accents like you're in Jane Austen, like you're in Downton Abbey, and talking about the Fairchilds. And whether you're going out for a game of croquet. And I feel like elements of the game, like when the servants get a little bit gossipy, and they start whispering, those parts of the game come out so much better around a table than they do in BGA. But we have played this game so much in the last year, and the majority of, I will have to say, is on BGA, that I think that's how it's ended up so much higher. I do love that puzzle of who's getting the Fairchilds. Are you going to the village fair or not? Where are you building out? Are you really paying attention to where the best scores are? Maybe getting out monuments and things like that, or to what those Fairchilds want. Do you think someone else is ahead of that race? You just sort of leave that and try and concentrate on your sort of personal end game goal missions. But what's really always tricky in this game is managing those darn servants. So they only want to serve the men or the women. They only want to do certain types of tasks, and you never have the ones that you need available at the time that you need them. And I think how I manage gaining new servants, adding different ones into the pool, gaining things that maybe allow them to be a bit more flexible, all of that kind of stuff, how that comes in the game, I think adds a little bit of light to this game, that sort of a little bit of pizzazz to it, to then just sort of adding tiles to a column essentially, and hoping that they score well depending on who you have available. It is interesting to have to sort of manage your people that you gain and not get too many Americans because they often have the minus points.
I think on BGA it's a great implementation, but it feels like that the theme gets stripped away somewhat. Because we're not doing that fun accents and because we can't see the little pictures of all the weird people and, you know, their interesting backstories. But it does expose the mechanisms of the game. And that's when you realise just how clever it is.
Yeah, it works very well.
So it does shine a light on just this is a really great game. And the theme, if that's appealing to you, is just a little cherry on the cake. I wasn't sure how to rank Arcs because I've played it a few times and we've scratched the surface of it because we haven't gone all the way into the campaign yet. And I was thinking, my first few games of Root weren't great because Root is a right angle of a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I thought, now considering how much I do love Root, have I only seen the potential of what Arcs is going to be and not yet experienced how magnificent it is? And I have no doubt at all that the more I play of Arcs, the higher up and up and up this list is going to go because the theme is great, the art, great, and I do like the not trick-taking mechanics of it all. You know, it's often labelled as a trick-taker incorrectly. It's a kind of prompt for what cards you can play and whether you follow suit or, you know, go your own path. I love how aggressive this game is, but yet it can be really twisty. So if you do go for the attacking route, which, you know, it's always the fun way to play this game. If it goes badly, you're not going to do well and you're probably not going to be able to recover from that. But if it goes gloriously fantastic, you're going to be so far ahead that it's going to be hard to people to challenge you. And I do like that risky nature of it. The way different people play it does show the kind of diversity of the game itself. And I do like seeing different approaches and seeing who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I won't see too much about this one because I'll be talking about it at a higher number. So Blood Rage has dropped a little bit on my list. Last year it was 23. Now we're at 34.
Oh, not a huge drop.
Not huge, but for where it is, I think a drop of 10 is quite significant, I'd say. But I think it's one of those that suffered from that. We haven't played it in a long time.
No.
A long time. I love a Viking theme. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that about me. So any Viking theme's just going to kind of automatically get a bit of a tick before I even get going with it. And I really like how you draft first in this game. You know, you're passing those cards around, trying to think which ones to take, which ones are strategic to let someone else have hold of or potentially or not. This is an area control game and part of that trilogy with Rising Sun, with Ankh. But I do really enjoy this one and I would definitely love to get it back to the table and really get it into those Fenrir models, all of those Simon kind of miniatures on the map, that area control, you're going around, you're doing battles with the other Vikings, and nice thematic gameplay, and, you know, really nice production from it as well. So it's one that I have very much enjoyed. And I think that were we to play it again, I imagine it could back up the list.
I think of those trilogy of games, obviously I prefer a different one to this one, but there is room on the shelf for more than one. They all play very differently with different focuses. It's not just
it's interesting. They're sort of like the same, you know, you've got that area control, you've got the miniatures, you've got all that thing. So technically they feel very similar, but they feel different to play. So, yeah.
142 hours. Oh, that's how long I've spent playing Stardew Valley on the Switch.
Quite a long
It is probably too much time to spend playing the same game. So when the board game version came out, I was absolutely delighted. And I do think they've approached this in the absolute perfect way. It pays homage. It's aware of the video game version, but it's a good board game in its own right. And I think that's because it hasn't tried to just replicate an exact version of the video game on the table. It's done its own thing. Now, this is a kind of big old evening, whole afternoon game. It's a kind of 3-hour experience where you're each just kind of doing your own thing. And there's echoes of the video game in that you're doing your fishing, you're doing your mining.
Yeah.
There's even some relationships in there. You have a pet and you'll be trying to stop that very, very evil Jojo Mart from taking over your beautiful little village. The art echoes the game itself, and for those reasons it's familiar and cozy for me because I've got so many happy memories of playing the video game, and it's nice to kind of introduce you to that world through the board game. I was talking earlier about how viticulture is kind of calming and soothing, like a nice glass of wine in front of the fire. Well, this is like a similar feeling. It's just relaxing and fun. That being said, by the end, wow, this gets tense. It's a hard game. You really get
to that crunch point, don't you? Where it's like, well, you need to stay in the mines. You need to just keep mining and hope that you get far enough. Or you need to go and fish. We just need to get more of that thing.
That fish.
And you're each end up with this kind of prime mission of, if you can just do that, then we might win. It's not an easy one.
No, but I just enjoy the experience of playing it. And, you know, Stardew Valley, the video game, had no end. This does, but it doesn't matter if you don't win.
So we're going from cozy farmlands to deadly battles in the woods. Ironwood is a game that we've both fallen in love with since its release at Essen. So obviously it is a brand new one to the list. It gives us all of that asymmetry and tightness and crunch that we love from Root, but as a two-player game.
Well, that's always where kind of Root goes wrong, isn't it? It doesn't play well at two, so this does kind of fill that void.
Yes. It is such an amazing production. Those wooden pieces, those iron pieces, and the way that each faction is specifically designed to entirely counter the other one. They do almost exactly the opposite of each other. So they're so well balanced between what you're each trying to do. And those routes to victory are so different. The woodwalkers are going in, they're trying to find these totems, and then they need to get them out of the forest, safe out of the hands of the ironclad, who often, if they work out where some of them are, can sort of set up camp there and really get in your way. Whereas the ironclad are needing to build out these forges, and they're both trying to use these blue crystals as well. So that asymmetry between the two of them just works so well in this game that it couldn't not have a place on the list for me.
It's strange to think that when we last did this list, I'd only played one Van Ryder game. I'd never touched Final Girl. And considering I'm enjoying solo games more and more and more, that seemed a strange one, because when you ask someone what's the best solo game, often they'll say Final Girl. And they're right to, because Final Girl is fantastic. You know, all those homages to those old 80s and 90s and more recent horror films. But at its core is very simple card play mechanics that get twisted with each different film. So once you know the kind of basic mechanics, you can then build on those. And the amount of complexity you want to build depends largely on which film you end up choosing. The season 1 one's much simpler. Then I've seen some of the season 3 way more complicated.
Yeah, some of that stuff that we've just been seeing recently does look really fantastic, adding new and different things to these feature films.
But at its core is just this really elegant system of working out how you're going to use your time, which cards you're going to play down, how much time you're going to reserve to buy better cards to then use on subsequent turns. That kind of card economy you have to weigh up, knowing that if you play something, it's not going to be accessible to you till a turn and a half time. And each different board, each different film plays so differently. It's strange to think that they are still the same game.
All of those different locations, all of those different baddies, and all of those different final goals gives you such variety in this great, great game. So my 32 is another brand new one to the list. And it's a small box game that we've been playing so much this year. It's Far Away. And I just find that mechanic of that sort of backward scoring so fantastic. It's such a simple thing to do with a card game, but it just messes with my mind.
I do love the fact that it's such a familiar mechanic that why has no one ever done this system before? And I love Far Away an equal amount, which is why it's my 31 on this list. So almost very nearly a crossover one off. But yeah, I do think it's wonderful that we're used to these kind of card laying games, and you score them based on what you previously got, but always laying them down knowing that, okay, I now need to fulfill that with my later cards.
Yeah, and of course, so as you're drawing out those later cards, you're always thinking, right, does that have the correct symbols that I'm going to then have active to then be able to score that one that I laid down first and second? And you're trying to gather the things that you've kind of sort of basically promised yourself to be able to do. But you're also looking at that number on the card, because depending on whether you play a higher or a lower number depends on whether you're going to get a bonus or not. And those bonus cards, the number that you get to take and then draw from, are so key, because they can give you some of those symbols and some of those things that you need. They can give you more scoring conditions, all of that kind of stuff that's really going to make this mini little engine work. And it's such a quick game. You're only drawing one short row of cards really to make it all sync together quickly. And there's certainly some games that we play and it's just, there's no chance that nothing ever comes up that's really going to work. And whenever it does, your opponent goes and takes the card and it just doesn't work. But when we then also have games where it just syncs so beautifully, everything comes out together.
It's so there's few experiences we've played probably this year that are as satisfying as that kind of click moment when that card comes up and you think this satisfies that condition and that condition and that condition. And you lay it there and you're scoring backwards and it feels glorious. But really equally, it's devastating when you're depending on one symbol coming up that's going to satisfy all those conditions and it doesn't. And you just look at your board going, I've got nothing here.
I've got nothing. But it's so quick and so replayable. It's one of those games you just, should we go again? Should we go again? That if you do have that kind of
the nightmare situation,
nothing's happening here, it doesn't matter. You just play again. So last up today is a game that we had played last year but didn't make the list. I think, again, it was one of those. We've only played it once, not 100%. It's recently come into our collection as well, actually, and that is Last Light. This is just such a clever game. It gives you that 4X experience, but in a short playtime. And it actually, if you have the expansions and things like that we have played with some of our friends, it allows you to play that kind of game with a high player count at a short play time. And of course, there's some beautiful planets. And it's a really interesting and fun, a brain burner again, much like Far Away, where partway through the game, that board's going to turn around. Everything you thought was true and that you had in your mind and your missions that I'm going to go there and then I'll try and get into there and I'll be able to do this. And then the board moves and everything changes. And you think, right, back to the drawing board.
This one. And obviously happens so much more at bigger player counts. It almost becomes an element of the game having to deal with the here and now or anticipating what's going to happen with other people doing their actions.
And it's just so great to have one of those sort of epic space journeys, but in a shorter play time and get lots of us around the table to enjoy that. So that has been my 31. So that's the end of the list today. So 40 to 31. Of course, we've got the next 30 coming up in 3 different videos. So do make sure that you ring the bell for notifications. Maybe you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not already, we would love to have you join us talking about board games in the future. And of course, if you have played any of these games, if you've got other favorite game suggestions or any other comments, we would love to hear from you. That would be really nice to hear what your thoughts are on our picks.
If you want to get any of these games, a good place to go is your friendly local game store. And for us in the southeast of England, that's Chaos Cards. And they have a fantastic website which will stock all of the games we're talking about. And if you're buying from them, there's a discount code in the description which will save you some money at the checkout.
It will indeed. But for now, we'll see you for our 30 to 21 next time. Bye.